Hey everyone, welcome to the Retention Edge podcast. This is the show where we sit down with the people shaping great customer experiences across e commerce and retail. From marketers and CX professionals to sustainability experts, we're interested in the strategies and ideas that basically keep customers engaged and coming back. On today's episode, we have Sophia Legros, a wonderful and accomplished sustainability and integrity expert. And Sophia, it would be great to get a bit of an intro from you.
Hi, I'm Sophia Legros. I'm Vice President of Product Integrity, Social Compliance, and Sustainability for the Spark Group. Now, they're part of something called Catalyst Brands now. I've been in the industry now for over 20 years. We handle product integrity, social compliance, and sustainability because they're all intertwined. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
That's
So.
fantastic. And is this a career you've been a part of for a long time? Or is it something you kind of wound your way and found yourself in?
You want to know something? I fell into this.
Okay.
There really isn't anything that now you're starting to see classes about product integrity, about social compliance and about sustainability. But back when I fell into it, it was legit just that I fell into it and it came in like modules. So it was, you have to test. Okay. So you start with testing. Then Rana Plaza happened. And then it turned into, now you have to start auditing your factories. Now you have to, have a social compliance program. And, the companies that I was working at that time, they were like, well, that should fall under product integrity because it all ties together. And so I'm like, okay, I don't know how to do this, but I'll figure it out. And I did. And then along comes sustainability. And sustainability has been around for a while. Like people have always wanted, sustainable products, but there wasn't much of a push for it. Like I think us as humans, we want everything so quickly. We don't think about the aftermath of what happens when you want something so fast. So as the sustainability movement gained more momentum, then that was one more thing to tie into product integrity, social compliance, and sustainability, because it's like if you're going to produce an item that you want to have longevity, then that falls under product integrity. And in order to work in a facility that can accomplish that for you, that falls under social compliance. So that's how all of those three worlds mesh and brand together. And there you have it. So it's not something that, I went to school for, or like I can tell anybody you can go to school for it. Most people you speak to in this industry have not gone to school for this. They've fallen in.
Right.
Yeah.
And would you say just based on, it sounds like all these pieces ultimately touch each other and converge in a very similar place. Have you found that they all kind of work hand in hand? It's really hard to decouple, say, social integrity and like responsibility from the sustainability angle within your
it's
industry.
It's not really hard because we designed a our own social compliance platform, our own auditing platform, whereas we embedded questions that tie into sustainability. We worked with an awesome sustainability consulting firm by the name of Blue Sky, and they helped us come in. I brokered that deal. Blue Sky is absolutely amazing. They've worked with the likes of J. Crew. They've worked with several other brands. They've also done work in Europe as well. And they understand us and they understood the complexity of having to help us establish a sustainability strategy for 7 unique brands.
Right.
So that's 7 brands, you're speaking to 7 different customers, 7 different expectations. So with that, the factories that are producing those goods obviously are different. The skill sets are different, right? Because the product that's being produced is different. So it was, how do you assure that they are adhering to the local environmental requirements as well as our own code of conduct with regards to our expectations for environmental standards and sustainability and that sort of thing. So we embedded it in the audit. And with that, the auditor is well versed. They know what questions to ask for. We know what we're looking for. And if that facility is not aligned with our expectations and what our strategy is in the space of not only sustainability, but also in women's rights and human rights, are people being paid accordingly? Making sure there isn't any child labor, making sure that people aren't being discriminated against. There's a lot to it. And if these facilities are not aligned with what our expectations are, then they do not have the privilege of working with us because we're not aligned. So if we're not aligned on the same strategy, we're not going to get the end result that we're expecting. Mm-hmm. And it's too much of a risk for us to put ourselves out there like that. So that's how I handle that. We embed it in the actual audit. And it'll also come out in the product testing too. Mm-hmm. It'll come out in the testing. You'll see those test reports. You'll see it in the quality of the product. And then you can tell something's going on there. So you ever heard the expression, you get what you pay for? It's very much true.
That's very true.
So, it's very true.
Yeah.
So that's how I handle that.
Okay. And, it sounds like you have a strong connection to, the work you're doing. And I'd imagine even within the brands you've worked with over the years, a large part of that ultimately feeds into, call it the brand identity and what the brand represents when speaking with customers, for example. So in your eyes, how do you kind of view product integrity, ethical sourcing, and things like compliance that brands might not necessarily think of off the top as being very important, but how do you kind of view this as directly impacting customer trust and ultimately retention?
We educate all of our teams on an annual basis, or if like there's a new regulation that comes out, it's my department's responsibility to communicate those standards to the teams that are involved, the teams that are touching the product. We schedule annual trainings with our production teams, our product development teams, the sourcing teams, the design teams, the marketing teams, because there's so many different hands involved with telling the story of the product. They all have to have the same level of education so that they know that this is how we control bad behavior from rearing its ugly head in our space. This is right. This is wrong. Do we always get it right? No, because, you learn as you go. This is a live business channel. This is an arm of the business that remains live. It's always moving. It's always changing. And with the government, things at the government being the way that they are, you can go into the office one morning and you think you're going to send out a memo that, effective immediately, we have to do this. And then by the time you leave, the memo that you wrote is now null and void because it's different. But at the same time, the basics are the same, right? So we have to take into account what that customer is expecting and how whatever standards are out there impact us. And what my team does is it's a very crucial, very critical role. It's like really, it's more important than people tend to give it credit for. They call us the cleanup people, and it's like, it's not about cleanup, it's about a preventative. It's a preventative. And we are a form of brand protection. Mm-hmm. If your name is splattered all over the news, this is an educated consumer now. This is not like back in the 80s or the early 90s where people were just buying things and, they didn't care. It looked good. I'm buying it. And that's the end of it. And then also with the, introduction of fast fashion, right? In order to get this product onto the floor quickly, there's certain things that you have to be aware of, and you have to be sure that, you have that under control. So you have to have your eyes and ears as to what's happening in these facilities that you're about to engage with. And that's why all of those three areas report to us. And what makes it even better is that we report to legal. So we don't even report into sourcing and production, because reporting into sourcing and production, I feel, is a major conflict of interest. Sourcing and production have one thing in mind: get the lowest cost. And they're under tremendous pressure to get the lowest cost, right? So with that, you have two types of sourcing people. Sourcing people that either understand the world of product integrity, social compliance, the sustainability aspect of it, and they want to do the right thing, but at the same time they'll go back and negotiate for the right amount. And then you have the sourcing and the production people who they don't care. They'll do shortcuts to get what they have to get so they can go back to leadership and say, hey, I saved you 20 cents.
Right.
Right. You saved us 20 cents, but that 20 cents that you sent us, that you saved us, is now about to get us placed on, the New York Times. Or so what did you save us? Because now I'm calling PR, I'm calling attorneys from the outside. What did you save us? So those, you have to, reporting to legal, you need that strong arm to be that neutral space to give you the support that you need to make sure that the company is doing the right thing. We're not the bad guy. We're not dream crushers. We just want to make sure that we are helping the design teams execute these dreams safely and ethically.
Makes a ton of sense. And I
Yeah,
think your point around like educated consumers and the types of buyers we have nowadays compared to say 20, 30 years ago, um, they expect more. They expect better from brands, right? Like I think the whole do better movement has come
right.
to a head. And
Yeah,
I think it plays such a crucial role in, to your point, not only how brands build and develop products, but also how you build a brand in general. Where
exactly.
if your brand is not keeping these things in mind now, like you said, kind of the 20-cent rule, right? It's what are you willing to give up for 20 cents?
Right.
Yeah, I'm a huge Kendrick fan. I mean, I don't know if that'll get me X, but he has he has the song "How Much a Dollar Really Costs," right? And
Right,
and it's
right.
like it's true. It's like you save that buck, but at the end of the day, what's that doing for your brand?
What is that doing for you,
Yeah,
So it's like, education is key. And sometimes, you have trends out here and everybody wants to jump on the latest trend. But sometimes the trend isn't a good trend. And you have to educate these teams as to why this isn't good. Why can't they get on board with it? Why can't they reference, hemp as a sustainable fiber, knowing that it's now, why it's not. A lot of people think, oh my God, hemp is so sustainable. No, it isn't. Like the way that they have to break it down and the process to get it to even become a fiber no longer puts it in a sustainable category at all. So it's educating the fabric teams, the design teams, because that's not their wheelhouse, right? They're creatives. They're not thinking that deep.
yeah,
So you give them a little bit of education, but you have to understand their language too. That you can't, the beauty of my team is that we don't only see things in black and white. We could see things in gray. We could see things in marble. And I think that's what makes us very unique. We're not the typical product integrity, social compliance, and sustainability teams where they see everything just one way. We see it from different avenues and we try to help people to execute these dreams, because if we're able to bring their team to life, then it makes us all successful.
yeah, absolutely. And sometimes it's very easy for teams to fall into silos and not really
Yeah,
consider the implication of their particular, I guess, piece of the puzzle and how that impacts the brand and even customer trust at the end of the day. Um,
absolutely.
I suppose right now, do you maybe just quickly, right? If you were to list, say, three of the biggest challenges that you think you face when ensuring like supply chain transparency, for example, um,
Oh,
what would you say those three
cotton
are currently?
traceability. Yeah, that's a bit of a challenge. Cotton traceability is a big challenge because it's like with the, Forced Labor Act, we have to be in compliance with that. And the challenge with that is, again, you're dealing with teams that are looking for the bang for their buck, right? And so assuring that they are not sourcing in areas that are not in compliant, that can put us in areas of danger, or them not understanding that we need to be able to trace where did this bale come from, That's been a challenge. So we've implemented software. We've worked with a company, and designed software so that it will be easier for the factories. It'll be easier for the fabric mills to be able to control it and to be able to tell us where it's coming from. You have to remember, a lot of these mills were not privy to this information. You're getting, handwritten receipts.
Right.
You know, this
Yeah.
is not, these are not, some of them are highly sophisticated and some of them are not. So this is new for everyone. So we've invested in some software, and hopefully that should, relieve that challenge. Then, we've also looked at other areas. We've partnered with Supima, and Supima has worked with the likes of Oratane. And then we keep a close relationship with Applied DNA Sciences, who believes in tagging the cotton, and they work with the farmers in the United States to tag the cotton. So then that way there's a genetic marker on the cotton, so that if it's they can test it some way and figure out that the cotton is safe and the cotton did come from the United States. But at the same time, there's challenges to all this, right? Because it's like, you can buy your bale of cotton from Texas or California, and the sun spins a certain way every day. And you can get your bale of cotton from Texas, and it can come up on a test saying that it came from Uzbekistan. Mm-hmm. And you're like, why? How? I know this cotton came from Texas. Here's all of the documentation that came from Texas. Well, the way that the earth spins, you can get the same rays from Uzbekistan in Texas. So now you're sitting here like, so how reliable is this testing? That's one challenge. Then we have other situations where you did the right thing. You bought your cotton. You got it from Brazil. You got it from the US. You got it from California. It was shipped to your facility in China or wherever you're producing. Well, they keep your cotton in a room with somebody who bought their cotton from God knows where. It's a mishmash. It probably came from Uyghur labor. And now you have your cotton tested, and it's saying that there's traces of Uyghur fibers. And you're like, no, I know for a fact my cotton came from Brazil. My cotton came from California. Here's my paperwork. Well, when it's in the warehouse or wherever they're storing it, cotton is a fiber. They fly. Right. And so now, if it's not isolated properly, right? So now you're going to get cross-contamination. So there's a lot of challenges here. So like, maybe it's going to get to a point where cotton's going to have to be like put in its own little stable, like a horse, or like its own little cubicle, So who knows?
Yeah. And these are all interesting things that I feel like even as a consumer, I don't understand, right? So sometimes you'll see brands get in trouble for breaking a certain practice or, not hitting their B Corp standards, right? But it sounds like to some degree here, and, you let me know, do you think brands are doing enough to kind of communicate, their sustainability efforts, but also the challenges that they face as brands when trying to communicate with their customers? Because ultimately people are, I feel like, for the most part, fairly understanding when given the context. At a broad level, sometimes. At a very broad level, when they care to look into the context.
Right.
But do you generally feel that brands have hit a stage where they're doing an adequate enough job communicating these things, or is there still like a general lack of understanding within brand teams?
I think within certain brand teams, there's still a lack of understanding. They're still trying to figure things out themselves. It's like, it's very easy to go down that slippery slope of greenwashing. I mean, look at poor H&M. I'm sure they thought they were doing the right thing. Yeah. But when you put that crown on and you say that you are the king and queen of sustainability, you're opening yourself up. You're opening yourselves up to, all eyes on you, and you better be able to deliver. Um, I think that a lot of these brands are so hyped to get on the sustainability train, but you know, they don't understand that they have to do their due diligence, meaning invest in the research, make the investments in the research. Everyone's trying to cut corners, everyone's trying to save costs. They think about it after the fact. They don't think about it during the conception of the thoughts or anything of that nature. It's like after.
Like they like the idea of being
Yeah,
sustainable,
100%.
but
Yeah.
they don't want to necessarily put in the steps that are required to actually be
Or
sustainable.
it's not that they don't want to do the steps. Some of them, they don't want to pay for the steps.
Fair.
It's not that they don't want to do them, because, if they do the steps, it's more appealing to the consumer because the consumer is looking at that. But then at the same time, they need to get in touch with that consumer, because some consumers are not interested in that. Some consumers don't want to wear recycled cotton. They don't want to wear recycled polyester. It depends on who your customer base is. But at the same time, they have to do their research. They have to do their homework to assure that what's being, communicated is correct. Because if it's not, you're going to get roasted.
That's true.
Yeah. There's always some NGO in the cut just waiting.
Just waiting.
They're just like sitting there, like, just like waiting to just pounce, So
And are there any brands that you feel like have cracked the code, at least to a good enough level, successful examples of brands integrating sustainability into their overall brand message, but maybe even into things like their loyalty programs or keeping customers around?
It's very tough right now. The economy is playing a serious role in that. I think, it's just really challenging right now for the consumer. I think a lot of what's happening with grocery prices being so high, a lot of people are losing jobs. Thrifting is a very popular trend right now. So retail is at a very challenging point. I can't really say that one brand is doing better than the next, because it's just people are almost at a point where they're just trying to survive, from what I'm hearing, from where I am. Now, you may go to another part of the country, it may be different, but where I am in the metropolitan, New York, New Jersey area, people are just trying to get by. Housing is out of control. If they're able to get it at a thrift store, they will. Thrifting is cool. They've made it cool. When I was in school, oh my God, I would never wear anything from the thrift store. I couldn't stand the smell of the store. But I like a flea market though. I love a flea market. But I like a flea market though for furniture. That's different. But I'm a little superstitious about that. We'll talk about that another time. That's a different topic for
different
a different
podcast.
Show. Different podcast, much different podcast. But I can't say that one brand's doing better than the next, because it's a lot of pressure to put on that brand. We had Patagonia come out like a couple of months ago, and they said, hey, look, we're not a sustainable brand. We never said we were sustainable. One of our sister brands had to come out and say something similar, because people just started expecting them to be a sustainable brand. And when that expectation is out there, you have to deliver. And if you don't have the money to deliver, or the audience to fund that expectation, because sometimes doing good isn't cost effective.
Absolutely. And that's very interesting. You mentioned, cost as part of the overall customer and brand experience. I think will always be a part of it, right? Do people have the money to actually invest in you as a brand, right? All these dreams, like you've kind of mentioned, that you have, all the positive directions you want to move towards. It's always this tightrope between, okay, if we're the first movers, we're basically absorbing all these costs of being the first movers, and will it pay off at the end of the day? Will consumers be in a place where this matters for them to be like, okay, I'm not going to spend $15. I'm going to stomach the $40 and, make things work. And this is very interesting because one of the things I was kind of curious, right, is customers say they care about sustainability. And, I, for example, like to think that I try to make the best choices as much as I can. But, my shopping behaviors don't always reflect that. And I imagine that's the case across, because it's tough, like you mentioned, right? It is hard to always make that right choice. Um, what do you think brands can do, maybe collectively, instead of trying to figure out singular brands, maybe even at an industry level? What are some ways that they can bridge this gap to make it easier for customers to make that smarter choice?
They're going to have to educate. It's hard to educate a store associate,
Yeah.
about, I mean, you're dealing with, somebody who's working part-time, who this is just probably something for them to get by. But you have to, your marketing teams, when they frame these stories and when they pump um the momentum to, you know, when they pump the momentum to frame a story and be a product's cheerleader, they have to call out these key attributes which fall into the sustainability arena and why are they beneficial. They have to convince the consumer, why is this beneficial? Why should you buy this? They're going to have to work a little harder. And, I think that's what that is. There's marketing involved, and then there's also overall brand communication. It's letting the consumer know this is what we're doing, this is what we are about. And transparency is key. Transparency is key. Don't be slick and, try to swap a fiber out, because you have loyalists. You have certain customers who've been wearing certain brands for so many years, and they're expecting that level of loyalty.
Hmm.
So you swapping something out may cause a lot of, you know,
Yeah.
issues. And then remember, there's the power of the internet now.
Yeah.
It's stronger than word of mouth. You just need one person to go on Reddit, one person to go on, any social media channel. TikTok is still alive and well. Like, I mean, and it's over.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. And I think that's something very interesting that brands might fall into a trap of, right? They go make a change thinking that, hey, we're trying to do the right thing. Let's just do it.
Right.
But keeping that open line of communication with your customers, especially your best customers, and working with them to essentially let them know, hey, here's a new direction we think is where our brand needs to move. Um, we'd love to understand how you feel about it, right? It's almost like at a personal level. How do you feel as shopper A that's always bought polyester, and you have innate beliefs about polyester and its role in your wardrobe? Now we're telling you, hey, we're shifting our entire line.
Have to
There's
do
going to
that
be
in
friction.
caps. You're gonna
Yeah.
have to do that. Like, you wouldn't do that overnight. Like,
Yeah.
that's something that would have to be like a gradual phase out and phase in. You would have to do that in batches, like maybe perhaps create a collection that had that fiber and frame a story about this new collection that you're developing. What are the positives associated with it? You may even call out the negatives. Does
Mhm.
not travel well, wrinkles very easily. Okay, great. I know I'm not taking this with me. It's not going to fit in my carry-on. Thank you for letting me know. You have to like own your stuff, like own your mess. Okay. And I think when you do that, the customer appreciates that, because when you're telling somebody, hey, this is great, I want you to buy this cotton linen shirt, and this is why, whatever. That's why when you see things that have certain attributes like anti-wrinkle, your businessman will buy that because he's traveling all the time. Your executive will buy that. He's traveling all the time. This is great. I don't have to worry about looking for a steamer or anything of that nature. I can put this in my carry-on and I'm good to go. Anti-wrinkle works for him. Now, when you sit here and you swap that out and you slip in something new, and he's like, wait a minute, I bought this shirt with me and it is a disaster, that's going to be a problem. But if you keep it real and you say, guess what? It is not going to travel well. It is, like, does not travel well. Wrinkles easy. You're telling somebody that? Now I know.
Yeah.
So I think you have to call out the good and the bad. And with our denim, we call out, hey, color may transfer over, pigments are, we're using intense, natural indigo fibers, indigo pigments. And with that, you may get some, you may get some color fastness.
Yeah.
You're telling the person straight up, be on the lookout of. And I think that's what a lot of people forget. It's just about transparency, because people right now, if they're spending that money, they are spending, you don't know where that money's coming from.
Yeah.
So
I really like this, like, that statement you made, like, own your mess. I think sometimes it's, as a brand, as a business owner, you always want to lean into the positives, right? But the mess is part of what makes you human, and makes your brand a bit more human in the eyes of a consumer. Where, I like this brand because, yes, they're not perfect, but they're working on it, right? Like the rest
or
of
they're
us.
telling me,
Or they're
I know
telling
if I
me,
shop there, right, this is what I'm going to get.
yeah,
Right. So if
yeah,
I'm looking for this level of what I define to be as perfection, I'm not going to get it shopping at, X, because he don't get an X shirt because he can't do that for me.
yeah.
So yeah.
That makes a ton of sense. In general, when thinking about CX and customer experience, right, I think some of these social issues gets brushed under the table by brands, kind of to your point, in the vein of profitability, or they don't have any choice, right? Like, on the surface, or even legally, like, there might be roadblocks in the way. But in your opinion, maybe outside of those limitations, what do you think brands need to try to do specifically around sustainability when trying to balance, okay, hey, our customers care about us moving in this direction, but we also still have to be profitable as a business. Um, do you have any, like, words of advice for brands trying to balance that, tiptoe on that fine line?
Well, the message of sustainability comes from the head. It comes from leaders. It comes from leadership. And so with that, right, one way to do that is to engage it into your corporate culture. So once you implement it within the corporate culture, it will get woven in to everything that you do. It starts from the top,
Mhm.
and it's going to trickle its way down to the bottom, but it has to start from the top. It has to start from leadership. They have to give you the tools, and they have to be supportive of the initiative. And if you don't have that support, it's not going to happen. I remember many, many years ago, I heard that Oprah Winfrey removed all paper cups from her from Harpo Studios, and people were mad, but hey, she gave them all
It's
mugs.
Oprah.
Yeah, right. It's Oprah.
Yeah.
Like, how dare you be mad at Oprah? You crazy? But at the same time, look at the impact that it made, right? So then, then it turned into emails. Stop printing unless you absolutely have to. And people started freaking out. But then they started thinking, well, do I need to print this email? Like, what am I doing with it? It was a security blanket to have a piece of paper in front of you. It's better to be free, to have your hands free and not looking for paper and this, that, and the other. But again, these strategies started from the top. So it's the same thing in fashion, right? And if leadership incorporates this is our company culture. We are a sustainable company. We are a sustainable organization. Okay. We are doing ABC practice within the offices. Okay. We are recycling paper. This is what we do. So now it's in your head. Now it's going to be in your thought process and everything that you do, and it will make its way down to the work. It'll make its way down to the fabrics that you're selecting, even down to the designs, even down to the testing standards, obviously, right? Because if it's sustainable, we need this thing to last. Okay. So now we're going to look at the factories. Can they align with what our cultural beliefs are as an organization?
And it's fantastic. And, I guess as a final forward thinking thought, how do you kind of see customers' expectations around called sustainability and transparency responsibility evolving, say, in the next, obviously these time horizon questions are always a bit wonky to me, but say in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think it's going to be an industry staple. I think it's going to just become second nature, because it's happening now. Certain we're, I mean, we're forced if we're going to sell into certain areas to disclose. So it's just going to become a normal part of life, and probably about a good, maybe I would give it 10 years. I wouldn't give it 5, but like probably within 10 years, it'll be like the California Proposition 65 sign that you see everywhere. It's to the point where you just become blinded to it because it's everywhere.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Well, that's about it. Is there any final thoughts you wanted to share?
I mean, this was great. Thank you for having me.
Of course, of
I
course.
don't have any final thoughts right now, but you know what? Just remember product integrity, social compliance, and sustainability. We are not brand killers. We are brand protection. We are here to protect the brand and to make your design dreams come true. We are not the fashion police.
Yeah. No, I love that. Thank you so much, Sophia. This was wonderful.
No
And
problem. Thank you
yeah,
for having me.
of course. Look forward to the next one.